I've been thinking about gardens lately, not the kind you plant, but the kind you see over someone else's fence. The ones that make your chest tighten, the ones that whisper you're not enough. I'm Adrian Vale. I've spent 30 years walking through 47 countries, sleeping in monasteries and hostels, talking to fishermen and philosophers, trying to understand one simple thing: why we suffer when we don't have to. And today, I want to talk about one of our most misunderstood companions: envy. Here's what I wrote in Kerala, India, 5 years ago. Met a woman today who hated her sister for 20 years because the sister became a painter. She herself never picked up a brush. The hatred wasn't about the sister. It was about the unpainted canvases in her own heart. Envy. We treat it like a moral failing, a sin to confess and eliminate. We're ashamed of it. We hide it behind smiles at dinner parties, behind congratulations that taste like copper in our mouths. But what if we've been looking at it all wrong? What if envy isn't a demon to exorcise, but a messenger we've been shooting before reading its letter? Let me tell you what envy really is. It's gratitude that got lost on the way home. It's a compass with a broken label. It's your own unrealized potential dressed up as someone else's success, knocking frantically on your door, begging you to pay attention. Think about it. When you see someone's garden, their career, their relationship, their body, their art, and you feel that familiar burn, that acidic twist in your stomach, what's actually happening? You're not seeing them. You're seeing a possibility, a version of reality where something you deeply want exists. And the pain comes not from their having it, but from the sudden, violent recognition that you don't. But here's the part we miss. You wouldn't recognize it if it wasn't already inside you. I learned this in Mongolia, in a jur, a nomadic tent, during a winter that tried to kill me. I was traveling with a family, and the father, Bata, was teaching his son to train eagles. Magnificent creatures, and I felt it, this sharp, bitter envy, not of the eagles, but of the relationship. The father passing down knowledge, the son receiving it with reverence. I was 53 years old, and I was jealous of a 12-year-old boy. Why? Because my father died when I was 11, and he never taught me anything except how to be afraid of his anger. I'd carried that loss for 42 years, never acknowledging it, never grieving it properly. And there, in that freezing tent, watching this father and son, my envy cracked me open. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, this feeling isn't about them, it's about me. It's about the father I never had, yes, but more. It's about the father I never became. I had no children. I'd spent my life running from roots, from commitment, from the very thing I was now envying. My envy was a messenger saying, Adrian, you want lineage. You want to pass something down. You want connection that transcends your own lifespan. And here's what happened when I listened. I started teaching, not in universities. I'm not that kind of philosopher, but in workshops, in letters, in conversations like this one. I started treating every young person I met as someone I could offer something to, not as a replacement for children, but as an answer to what the envy was actually pointing toward. The envy didn't disappear, but it transformed. It became gratitude. Gratitude for Bata showing me what was possible, gratitude for the wake-up call, gratitude for my own capacity to still want something, to still feel desire at 53. Envy is gratitude that hasn't found its way home yet. And our job isn't to kill it, it's to walk it back, hand in hand, to where it belongs. So let's take this apart. Let's look at the mechanics of how gratitude becomes envy, how the message gets scrambled. It starts with projection. You see someone living a life that resonates with something deep in you, something you've perhaps never articulated, maybe never even consciously acknowledged. A writer publishes a novel, a friend finds a loving partner, a colleague gets promoted, a stranger on the internet has abs you could grate cheese on. And immediately your psyche does something fascinating and terrible. It takes your own unlived life, your own dormant possibilities, and projects them onto that other person. You make them the container for your own potential. They become the screen onto which you project the film of your unrealized self. This is crucial. The envy you feel is not about them. It's about you meeting yourself in disguise. The Buddha talked about this, though not in these terms. He spoke about tanha, craving, thirst, and how we suffer because we constantly reach for what we don't have. But he also taught that this craving points to something real, a genuine need, a genuine capacity for fulfillment. The problem isn't the desire itself. It's that we've misidentified where the fulfillment comes from. We think, if only I had what they have, I'd be complete. But the truth is, what they have is showing me what I'm capable of creating. This tree is 800 years old. It's seen empires rise and fall. It doesn't envy the younger trees, their flexibility, their faster growth. It doesn't envy the vineyard across the valley. It just grows, year after year, becoming more itself. But we're not trees. We have consciousness, which is both our gift and our curse. We can imagine alternative versions of ourselves, alternative lives. And when we see those alternatives embodied in other people, we experience a kind of temporal vertigo, a sickening sense of paths not taken, of time running out, of having somehow failed a test we didn't know we were taking. Here's where it gets psychologically interesting. The intensity of your envy is directly proportional to two things. First, how deeply the thing you're envying aligns with your authentic values and desires. And second, how far you are from actively pursuing it yourself. You don't envy people for things you genuinely don't want. I don't envy accountants because I have no desire to be an accountant. Nothing against accountants, the world needs you. But it's not my path, so there's no charge there. But I have envied writers, teachers, people who seem to have found a way to live thoughtfully and share that with others, because that's exactly what I want. That's my territory, and the times I've felt that envy most acutely. When I've been avoiding my own work, when I've been scrolling instead of writing, when I've been running instead of rooting. The envy spikes when the gap between your current life and your possible life becomes unbearable to ignore. So envy is actually a sophisticated internal guidance system. It's your psyche's way of saying, pay attention, this matters to you, this is your territory, you're off course. But instead of reading it that way, we do something tragic. We make it about the other person. We resent them. We diminish their achievement. We find reasons why their success doesn't count, why it's not real, why they had advantages we didn't have. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes people do have advantages. Life isn't fair, privilege is real. But here's the thing, even when that's true, the envy still isn't about them. It's still about you, about what you want, about what you're not doing. You can acknowledge systemic inequality and take responsibility for your own unrealized potential. These aren't contradictory. In fact, they're both necessary. The question envy asks is not, why do they have what I don't? The question is, what is this showing me about what I truly want? And what am I going to do about it? That's the fork in the road. You can stay in envy, bitter, resentful, paralyzed, or you can follow it home to gratitude and action. So how do we do it? How do we transform envy into gratitude? How do we walk it home? First, we have to get honest, brutally, uncomfortably honest. We have to admit what we're actually feeling, not dress it up as inspiration when it's really envy, not pretend we're happy for someone when we're actually seething. I keep a practice I call the envy inventory. When I feel that familiar burn, I write it down. I don't judge it. I don't try to fix it immediately. I just acknowledge it. I am envious of X because they have Y. Then I ask, what does Y represent to me? What do I think having Y would give me? And this is where it gets interesting, because the surface answer is never the real answer. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I was envious of a colleague, another philosopher, younger than me, who got a book deal with a major publisher. My first thought was, I want a book deal. But when I sat with it, when I really interrogated it, I realized, I don't actually want a book deal. I've been offered book deals. I've turned them down because I don't want the pressure, the deadlines, the marketing machinery. What I actually wanted was validation. I wanted proof that my work mattered, that I wasn't just a wandering eccentric talking to myself. The book deal was a symbol, and once I understood that, I could ask, how else can I get validation? What would actually satisfy this need? And the answer was deeper engagement with the people I'm already reaching, more meaningful conversations, quality over quantity, which is exactly what I started pursuing. The envy pointed me toward a real need, validation, impact, mattering. But the solution wasn't to copy what the other person did. It was to find my own path to meeting that need. Second step, we have to separate the person from the symbol. The person you're envying is not your enemy. They're not blocking you. Their success doesn't diminish your possibilities. In fact, their success proves that what you want is achievable. They're evidence that the thing you desire exists in the world. This is where gratitude starts to enter. Instead of resenting them, you can thank them, even if only silently in your own heart, for showing you what's possible, for being a lighthouse that helps you navigate toward your own shore. I started doing this actively. When I feel envy, I literally say out loud if I'm alone, "Thank you for showing me this is possible. Thank you for activating this desire in me. Thank you for being evidence that this path exists." It sounds simple, maybe even silly. But it works. It shifts the energy from scarcity to abundance, from competition to inspiration. Third, we have to take action. This is non-negotiable. Gratitude without action is just spiritual bypassing. You can't just feel grateful and inspired and then do nothing. The envy is a call to move. Ask yourself, what is one small step I can take toward the thing I'm envying? Not a giant leap, not write a novel tomorrow or find a soulmate by Friday. One small, concrete action. When I envied that father-son relationship in Mongolia, my action was write a letter to a young person I'd met who was struggling with direction. Offer mentorship. That was step 1. It led to step 2 and 3, and eventually to a whole new dimension of my work. When I envied the book deal, my action was Reach out to 3 people who told me my work mattered to them and have real conversations. Deepen those connections, small steps. But they redirect the energy. They take the charge out of the envy and put it into creation. And here's the beautiful thing. When you do this, when you actually follow the envy home and take action, something shifts in how you see other people's success. It stops threatening you. It starts genuinely inspiring you. You can celebrate others because you're no longer in competition with them. You're on your own path. I have a friend, a painter, who used to be consumed with envy of other artists. Couldn't go to gallery openings. Couldn't look at art magazines. It was too painful. But she started doing this work, acknowledging the envy, understanding what it was pointing to, taking action on her own painting practice. And now, she's one of the most generous supporters of other artists I know. She celebrates their work authentically, because she's doing hers. The envy transformed into genuine gratitude and solidarity. That's the alchemy. Envy into gratitude, resentment into action, comparison into creation. But there's a deeper layer to this, something more philosophical, more existential. Envy reveals something profound about human consciousness. We are beings of infinite possibility, trapped in finite circumstances. We can imagine countless versions of ourselves, countless lives we might live. But we can only live one. We have to choose, and every choice forecloses other choices. The existentialists understood this. Sartre talked about bad faith, the ways we lie to ourselves about our freedom and responsibility. Kierkegaard wrote about anxiety as the dizziness of freedom. We're anxious because we're free, because we have to choose, because we can't live all possible lives. And envy is what happens when we see someone living a possibility we foreclosed or never pursued or didn't know existed. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't have everything. You can't be everything. The person who commits fully to their art might not build a family. The person who builds a family might not travel the world. The person who climbs the corporate ladder might not have time for contemplation. These aren't moral judgments, they're just the mathematics of finite time and energy. Every life is a series of trade-offs. And envy often arises when we see someone who made different trade-offs, and we're confronted with the costs of our own choices. I chose a life of wandering, of freedom, of exploration, and I've paid for it. I have no children, no permanent home, no accumulated wealth, no long-term partnership. When I see people with those things, sometimes I feel envy. And that envy is grief in disguise, grief for the paths not taken, the lives not lived. But here's what I've learned. You can grieve those unlived lives without regretting the life you chose. You can acknowledge the cost without calling the choice a mistake. There's a concept in Japanese aesthetics, mono no aware, the pathos of things, the bittersweet awareness of impermanence and limitation. It's the feeling you get watching cherry blossoms fall, knowing they'll be gone soon, knowing you can't hold on to them. That's what we need with our own lives, mono no aware for our choices. A tender, accepting sadness for what we can't have, what we can't be, precisely because we chose something else. And when we can hold that, when we can feel the grief without the bitterness, envy loses its sting. Because then we understand, the person we're envying is also living a finite life. They also made trade-offs. They also have unlived possibilities haunting them. Their garden looks beautiful from outside the fence, but they're inside it, dealing with the weeds, the pests, the droughts. This isn't about diminishing anyone's achievements or happiness. It's about seeing clearly, seeing that every life is a mixed bag. Every choice has consequences, and the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's just different grass. When you really understand this, envy becomes almost tender. It becomes a recognition of shared human limitation. We're all trying to make something meaningful out of our brief time here. We're all dealing with the impossible task of choosing one life from infinite possibilities. So the deepest transformation of envy isn't just personal, it's philosophical. It's accepting the human condition. It's making peace with limitation. It's understanding that you are enough, not because you have everything or can be everything, but because you're here, now, doing your best with what you have. And from that acceptance, gratitude naturally arises. Gratitude for your own life, exactly as it is. Gratitude for the choices you made, even the hard ones. Gratitude for what you do have, rather than resentment for what you don't. And gratitude for the people who trigger your envy, because they're showing you what you still desire, what's still alive in you, what you're still capable of reaching for. So here's where we end up. Envy is gratitude that got lost on the way home. It's your own unrealized potential, knocking on your door, asking to be let in. When you feel it, don't run from it. Don't shame yourself for it. Don't pretend it's not there. Feel it fully. Let it show you what you truly want. Let it reveal the gap between where you are and where you could be. And then, this is the crucial part, walk it home, transform it. Thank the person who triggered it. Thank yourself for still being capable of desire. And take one small step toward the thing you're being called to. Your envy is a compass. It's pointing toward your own unplanted garden, your own unpainted canvas, your own unwritten story. Stop staring at someone else's garden and get to work on your own. Not because their garden doesn't matter, not because you shouldn't appreciate beauty wherever it grows, but because you have seeds in your pocket that will never bloom if you don't plant them. You have gifts that will die with you if you don't unwrap them, and the world needs what you have to offer, not what someone else has to offer. What you have. Envy is a messenger. Read the message, thank the messenger, and then do the work only you can do. I'm Adrian Vale. Thank you for walking with me today. May you find your way home to your own garden. May you plant what only you can plant. And may you learn to be grateful for your own life, for others' lives, for the brief, precious, impossible gift of being here at all. The envy you feel is not your enemy. It's your unlived life calling you home. Answer it.